Hello and welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, India's largest platform for entrepreneurs. I'm Sunanda Jaiseelan. Anything that matters to you, we cover it here on the show, answering your questions about any aspect of your business. In this Tuesday special, we talk all things personal finance, how you should save your money, why you should be saving it, what asset classes perhaps should you be looking at. And to answer just that, two experts joining us on the show today. Let me first up introduce Saurabh Mittal. We also have Ajinkya Kulkarni, co-founder of Wint Wealth. Gives me great pleasure to welcome Saurabh Mittal on this episode tonight. Saurabh, I want to start by asking you to talk to our viewers about your personal, investment mantra. When it comes to approaching your finance, your wealth, what's your personal mantra like?
So Sunanda, over the years, what we've come to believe is that people tend to make things more complicated. So the mantra is to keep things really very, very simple. Decide a right asset allocation for you. Choose the products which are time tested and just stick to those asset allocation and keep things simple. There's no point in trying to try new products or new investment avenues. And if you just try to keep things simple, the journey is really, really peaceful and you can achieve your goals without worrying about what's happening, what's the new fad and, losing your money or kind of committing your money to something which you don't understand.
So when you're saying keep it simple, what mistakes perhaps have you made in the course of your professional journey that you would like to talk to our viewers about saying, I wish I'd known better?
Yeah, for all of us, not only with our clients, we have seen a lot of them when they want to test their waters into equity market. Inevitably, they want to do some kind of trading. They want to get into, derivatives and by trading in futures and options. And we've seen, each one of them kind of burning their hands by trying those things without really understanding. They want to make a quick buck out of it. And then eventually when they lose the money, they learn the lesson hard way and eventually they stop doing it. And even, in terms of, getting into very, very complex kind of funds, whether it is AIF and things, I'm not saying those products are bad, but it's not really meant for each and every investor. So more and more, we've seen a lot of investors now moving towards passive index funds and really having a right asset allocation and sticking to it. And it's giving them really, really good peace of mind and clarity about how things are moving and how they can achieve their goals.
When we're talking about things like cryptocurrency, for instance, there's a lot of information out there. And for someone who's confused saying, should I invest in some of these mechanisms? What is your advice to them? Should they look at it? Should they not? And I'm not just talking cryptocurrency. I'm talking about, anything which is new, which for a first-time investor, they don't understand it. What is your advice about how they should be approaching these different asset classes?
Yeah, we all know this, all the time we've heard that history doesn't repeat itself, but it always rhymes. So it is inevitable that every time a product or an asset class which tends to move up very, very fast, it attracts attention of all the investors and they tend to, try their hands into it. So even we have seen with our clients, even with a small amount, they want to fund with investing maybe a lakh rupees or so and forth and see how it's going to turn up. Our only simple take is that invest only when you understand those things completely. A lot of people are investing just because markets have gone up or they see other investors talking about it. Very few, famous celebrities tweeting about it, and they're just investing, saying that if someone else is investing, in the guys of this caliber investing, it must be a good thing, and they just invest without understanding the risk. So I think it's just best to understand those things completely and then trying it and ensuring whether it really fits your portfolio or not.
What's your advice then, for someone who's investing for the first time? How should they perhaps go about educating themselves about the different mechanisms of saving money at a time when so much is changing? The market is changing, everything is changing around them. What's your advice?
The best thing is to have an advisor as a bouncing board, because generally when people tend to discuss it with other investors or their friends or families, they tend to kind of only talk about their own view about what they have about those investments or particular products. Like for example, if someone has the view that equity is very risky, they would just not want to touch it because everyone else has the view. And similarly, if someone has made quick money in that, they feel that it's an avenue just to make fast money. So I think the best way is to have someone unbiased, maybe a financial advisor whom you can use as a bouncing board and get unbiased advice as to how those things are working, what are the pros and cons of those investments.
I want to just break this up by saying, let's look at your advice for someone who's saying, I'm a first time investor, I'm someone who's approaching my wealth and finances, for the first time, I'm really sort of looking at it for the first time. What are the guidelines? What's the framework they should keep in mind? What's your advice for them? First of all, how should they understand the difference between saving and investing? What's your advice?
So, what we say is that when it comes to money, it resides in four forms. It is in form of asset, liability, income, and expenses. And when you start your personal finance journey, you have to look at from all these four aspects. Generally, what happens is that people only tend to look at the asset part of it, which is the investment, and they feel that everything that needs to be worked upon is only in the investment part. But what we really want people to advise is to have a step-by-step approach. First is to have a clear-cut goal as to how they're going to invest. Maybe start with first accumulating a right amount of a contingency fund or an emergency fund, get themselves adequately insured because if they are breadwinners and people are dependent on them, they have a right amount of insurance. And then they should start thinking about what is the kind of risk that they should take to achieve their financial goals. So it first starts with very, very basic things of risk management, of creating an emergency fund or getting themselves insured.
So for someone who's approaching you for your clients, what are the basics that you sort of break it down for them? What advice do you give them?
So the first and foremost thing, that we tell our clients or prospective investors that generally people only tend to focus on investments when it comes to financial planning. We say that the money stays in four different forms. It is in either a form of an asset or a liability or an income or an expense. And when you do financial planning, you should have that overall rounded approach of looking at all these four aspects of money. And looking only at investment doesn't really ensure that you are successful in your endeavors to achieve your goals. So when there's someone who's just starting new, we really stress upon risk management, which starts with having a right amount of contingency fund or emergency fund, as we call it. Or next step towards it is having an adequate amount of insurance if their family members depend on his income, and having a right form of life insurance and general health insurance. And once those things are been taken care of, then you look at investments about what are the kind of goals that you want to achieve. You ultimately choose the right investment products which help you in achieving those goals.
Since everyone is talking about health at this point, I want to ask you if you can help our viewers understand your advice when it comes to periodically assessing really the health of their investments. How should they go about doing that? What should they keep in mind? What's your advice?
So, when we talk about saving and investment, I think the first and foremost thing to remember is that there is a difference between saving and investment. We are a nation of great savers and we save, we have a good saving ratio. But what is also important is that not to let that money lying idle in the bank account. Because if it's just lying idle, it's not making money for you. And what is important is that you just put them to work immediately towards achieving your goal. So when you want to make the right investment decision, it really depends on what your goal is. Ultimately, where do you want to reach? The medium of transportation is always dependent on the destination where we want to travel. So if your goal is very, very far away, like it's about 10 years away, then maybe you can use investment products which have a huge amount of volatility, maybe like equities. But if your goals are very, very in near term, say maybe 3 years or so, then you probably have to rely on fixed income products.
For someone who's saying, I don't know what my financial goals should be. Say, for instance, since in this latest edition of Leaders of Tomorrow, we are speaking with students who aspire to become entrepreneurs, in the next 2 to 3 years, say once they pass out of college. And they're saying at that point, I don't know what my financial goals should look like. What's your advice?
We don't believe in that because we feel that, there's this famous saying that in personal finance, it is more about person rather than being financed. So there's no point in kind of dictating or saying that this is what your goals should be. But what we really request, or advise people is that even at early age, don't try to focus only on your short-term goals. Generally, people at those age when they just started their career, what is more important for them is to maybe buy the next better car or a better phone or go for a better holiday. But what we advise them is to have a even a longer term view and aim as to how do they really want to have financial freedom, where do they say they see themselves later in their career, and then accordingly have a right balance of what amount of commitment or what amount of resources do they want to commit towards those short term goals, which are also important, as well as commit some money or some resources even to those long term goals, although however far fetched or less important they might seem at this point of time. But eventually, those are the goals which will be really coming handy, those investments, because they won't really enjoy the power of compounding.
Speaking of health, I do want to talk about insurance policies and insurance policy, as a mechanism of saving, as a mechanism. First of all, should we be looking at insurance policies as a mechanism for saving, and your advice?
So, we feel that, insurance predominantly, the role of insurance is to manage risk. As far as health insurance considered, there is obviously no element of investment, it's just pure risk management. So you have to ensure that you get the right policy with the right amount of features and right amount of coverage for yourself. So, as a thumb rule, it's ideally advised that you should have at least 20 times of your annual income as a risk cover. And to have that through conventional investment based policy is almost impossible. So maybe have a right amount of risk coverage by taking a good amount of cover in term insurance. And if at all you want to do some investment, maybe you can use investment based policies or other investment products like mutual funds to take care of the goals that you might have in the long term.
All right, Saurabh, thank you so much for your time. Let's slip into a break. When we come back, Ajinkya Kulkarni of Wint Wealth is joining us. Stay tuned, back in just a moment. Welcome back with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow. Tonight, I'm in conversation with Ajinkya Kulkarni of Wint Wealth, talking about all things wealth. Ajinkya, good having you here on the show with us. We were discussing this online, and perhaps this is a good place to start. For entrepreneurs, you very often see them confusing personal and professional. And by professional, I mean, the money that that belongs to the business, that you should be plowing back into the business. Very often you say that you're seeing them saying, hey, it's okay, perhaps I can dip into this money, so to speak. There are no clear lines, and you're saying that there need to be those clear lines. Why are those mistakes happening? How can an entrepreneur avoid that?
The most common mistake is people don't separate personal finance from professional finance. When things are going good, people think they will pour all the money in the business. And when the business grows, they will be able to take out the money. Unfortunately, no good cycle tends forever, or bad cycle tends to last forever, right? But if they put in all the money in the business, and when the economy goes through a crisis like this one, they are caught red-handed, and they don't have any even backup, or they don't have any additional money to put into a business. So that's the common mistake I've seen. The only solution is people should draw out salaries and build personal wealth, which can be used, or it is outside business and can be used to support business in a times like this.
You were explaining to me the concept of the framework, with the emphasis being on the. Can you elaborate on that?
So the framework stands for T stands for term insurance, H stands for health insurance, and E stands for emergency funds, right? So for even if you're not an entrepreneur, this is very important. So unless this is done, term insurance, health insurance, and emergency fund, there is no point in doing any financial planning. And especially if you're an entrepreneur, a business is dependent on you, and probably you have put in a lot of your own money to start the business, right? So this becomes even more important. The thing, people tend to kind of underestimate the probability of this happening, and the probability is generally low, right? But when it happens, it hits hard to the family, to the business. So one must have this before, and this is the first basic step of any financial planning. And people tend to forget this. Post COVID, we have seen people taking health insurance very seriously, but I don't see yet people taking term insurance and key man policies very seriously and getting them issued. And people must do that, entrepreneur or otherwise.
So, have I understood you correctly? Are you recommending insurance as a means of investment?
No, 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 absolutely not. In fact, insurance should never be seen as an investment, and I wouldn't recommend anything that has that gives you some kind of money back insurance policy. Insurance policies, either term or health, should always be should not pay you back unless there is an event happening. So any kind of combination of insurance and investment is should be avoided in general.
Is there some sort of a framework for these insurance policies when you were talking about the framework? How much should you be putting into what? Is there some sort of a framework?
Uh, Regarding term insurance, there are always, let's say, 20x of your yearly income, or there are definitive numbers. I personally believe you should take maximum policy that can be offered to you. Health cover, you should always have sufficient, at least 10, 15 lakh. Emergency fund, 6 months expenses is minimum. And if you are going through pandemic and you don't know what is going to happen, you might as well expand that emergency fund to 12 months.
Since you work so closely with HNI clients, how does an HNI remain an HNI? Is my question to you. What advice do you have for the rest of us, for entrepreneurs, for small businesses, about how and why HNIs are perhaps doing things differently when it comes to saving in a period of uncertainty, and what lessons based on that you can offer us?
Yeah. So 6 months or 12 months, it's more of a psychological comfort that you draw from. So it is important if you think like now we are going through a pandemic, even if your SM is doing fine, or if your business is doing fine, nobody's sure what is going to happen next, right? Then it makes sense to expand that emergency fund, and that can give you mental peace and comfort to go and work and whatever you need to do, right? So what I've observed by talking to or working with wise investors, that when things are going well, they are well ahead planning for things for time when things won't be well, right? So they will create emergency funds, they will invest, they will stick to proper allocation. If just because market is going up and up, they wouldn't put all the money in equity. They will maintain asset allocation. What is so they will stick to their framework, right? If they have said we'll put X% in equity and Y% in debt, they will stick to it even in the good times and bad times. So what pandemic has taught us is uh, there is, I mean, it is age old wisdom, and market always corrects, or things again come back to normal. What is more important is that we as a human being keep forgetting it till we are hit by it, and hopefully learn it better and internalize it, and that's what we should be doing, uh, mostly without having to pay the price, right? So yeah, most important is sticking to whatever strategy you have decided in the good times as well. People tend to astray when things are going too well, which is what people shouldn't do.
How has financial planning changed thanks to COVID, Ajinkya? The way one is approaching finances now, has it changed completely the way you're thinking about your money? Because a lot of people are losing jobs, there's so much uncertainty. How have things changed?
One clear difference I see, that people are looking at debt allocation more and more seriously, because pandemic has made markets volatile and nobody knows where markets are going, right? And we saw a large dip in last March as well, right? So people are more now keen, even the young population, young generation, right? Earlier people were saying all guns for equity, and now people are taking more debt products more seriously and looking at different debt options, which is a welcome change.
So FY22, even as we are perhaps in the middle of the second wave of COVID, we're perhaps looking at a third wave, we're perhaps looking at another national lockdown. With all of this uncertainty, is there something that you would want to advise a viewer about keeping in mind for FY22?
I mean, there are two kind of advices I would go. People who have sorted the basics should stick to whatever strategy they have deployed. Uh, if you haven't done it, probably it is the right time to do. And before doing that, I would advise people not to get into speculative market where if the market is moving in that direction, they then making a huge bet just thinking about it without covering for basics. So probably when new kind of investors, or if you're just new to financial planning, when people enter, they tend to go by recency bias, wherein they see if this is going well in last 2-3 months or probably a year, then probably this is where I should be. But that's not the right way of looking at things. So people need to take a longer view, even if you are new to the market. So people should avoid recency bias if you're new. If you're old in the market, or then stick to your strategy. That's best.
Ajinkya, I want to close today's conversation by asking you to really talk about the work that you do and how you got associated with the field of finance. You're a manufacturer of fixed income products for retail investors. What do you want to tell us about the work that you do?
Yeah. So I come from a lending background. I have been working in fintech for last so many years. And what we observe that there are many fixed income products which are available to either institutional investors or ultra HNIs or family offices. And those are not available for retail investors. I myself wanted to invest in those assets because I could see a good risk adjusted return there. And that's when we got that got us thinking, saying, can we bring those assets for retail investors? The main challenge has been education about those assets, getting retail investors acquainted with these assets, and we are leveraging technology to educate investors about these assets and bringing these assets. So these are assets that have been very popular on institutional investors. So smart money is already there. These assets give you higher than FD return, but are less risky than equity. So FDs are low risk, low return. Equities are high risk, high return. And there is this big white space in between for retail investors where they want to make more than FD return, but they don't want to take a really high risk that is there in equities, and that's where we are working. What got us thinking is we ourselves wanted access to these assets, and we didn't have. So we sort of thought there would be many more people like us who would want access, and therefore we are solving for it. And retail, democratizing this asset class and seeing people getting access and they making more money is what motivates us, frankly.
All right, Ajinkya, thanks so much for your time. Completely out of time on this episode of Leaders of Tomorrow. If you have any feedback for us or you want to see any investment advisors, any wealth managers being featured on the show, to let us know. Our contact details is on your screens as you see. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good night.